Hi, and welcome to another On the Books, coming to you from the Bowie Media TV studio. We're here today to discuss another young writer. His name is Mike Brown, and he's written a short story, or a series of short stories, and one in particular we'll talk about today. Welcome, Mike. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
I'm fine. So you've written a short story. It's called
Soldier's Curriculum.
Soldier's Curriculum, and you're submitting that story to the Mitchellville Writers Group.
Yes.
Okay, and that'll be this Sunday.
Yes, it will.
I got to tell you, everybody, I bring a lot of Mitchellville Writers Group writers here because I'm a member of that group. And Mike's one of the newest people to come to the Mitchellville group. Have you been in writers groups before?
I haven't.
And so this will be your first submission to a writers group
Ever.
ever.
Yes, it will.
Okay, well, tell us a little about Soldier's Curriculum.
Soldier's Curriculum is a fantasy short story.
Not another Harry Potter.
No.
Oh, thank God. Not that I don't like Harry Potter. I'm sorry. Continue, please.
No problem. It's a fantasy short story, and I decided to write a short story, one, as a means of practicing my writing craft, because I have very little writing experience beyond a couple of writing courses that I took while I was in school. And so I'm hoping that, and I do realize that writing a short story and writing a novel require two separate skill sets, but I think I think there's enough overlap that I'll benefit from.
Well, I'm a short story writer myself, and I've heard it's actually, well, not heard, I believe it's actually harder to write a short story.
Right, exactly.
Because you have less space to do the same thing.
Absolutely.
A story's a story, right? So you like to tell stories.
I'm learning to appreciate it, yes.
Okay, and so tell us about your story.
Let's see. So the main premise of the story is you have a group of beings called the Sclerocytes. They possess volatile and destructive magic, and they usually don't live very long, but someone gets the bright idea of trying to train them or trying to use their powers for
And who
war.
are these people?
Which people?
You say the
The Sclerocytes, yes.
the Sclerocytes have destructive magic powers.
Yes.
Who decides to use them?
The Thracionians.
The Thracionians?
Yes.
Okay. Please continue. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Now, the issue with the Sclerocytes is that they have very little control over their own magic, so the people around them tend to crumble under the pressure of trying to work with them. So the story attempts to answer the question of what will happen when they decide that it's no longer safe.
Okay, now is it magic that makes this a fantasy story?
I think so.
You had mentioned earlier in the green room, if you would, that most of your previous reading was science fiction.
Yes.
Rather than fantasy. And explain to us what you see as maybe the difference between fantasy and science fiction.
Sure. One of the key elements of science fiction, I think, is that science fiction and fantasy are both far-fetched in their own ways, but science fiction, I believe, represents the future that could logically be reached in our world, given anywhere from a century to 5 centuries. I mean, every day we have new technological and scientific advancements, and I think that with enough of those, we could get to the places described in modern science fiction.
Okay.
Obviously, there are certain concepts that are still probably beyond our reach, like teleportation and those sorts of things.
Well, I'm not
But
so sure how far away that is.
exactly,
But go ahead.
exactly. But with the science we have now, it's not infeasible to get to some of the places we describe in science fiction. Fantasy, however, describes a lot of forces that are unimaginable with any amount of scientific advancement, and a lot of times they feature things like magic, whatever that may be.
And in fact, they're often seem to be set in past times almost.
A lot of times, yes.
Okay, except maybe for Harry Potter. So, speaking of just science fiction and its future, I'm not sure if you're familiar with 2010: A Space Odyssey, but that's my generation. But it was the science fiction of the time, and 2010 was a long way off, or it seemed like a long way off, and our communication technology had changed drastically. But in 2001 Space Odyssey, there was still a typewriter. When's the last time you saw a typewriter?
Probably when I was a kid.
Okay. I was afraid you were going to tell me you were one of those writers who still uses an old Remington. What is your process for writing? We'll come back to the story.
Okay. Let's see. Well, first of all, I am an outliner.
An outline, in other words.
Yes. So I spend just as much time on my outlines as I do the actual writing. As for the actual writing, as for time spent on the actual keyboard, so far I haven't developed a process that I enjoy and can stick to. It would be ideal if I could get up early in the morning and do my writing then, when no one's likely to bother me.
You're not a morning person.
Absolutely not.
See, now I am. But go ahead.
But that would be so. A lot of my writing, of course, gets done at night, or sometimes even I'll do it on lunch breaks. But
Okay.
I'm getting closer to writing every day.
Okay. And so you don't handwrite,
No, I don't.
not even the outlines.
Well, actually, I shouldn't say I don't handwrite at all, because I do. I actually have a notebook that, whenever I'm on Metro, I'll use it. At
Okay.
work, during meetings, I'll use it.
Oh, the proverbial meeting notebook.
Yes. So,
Now, you're from Baltimore.
yes.
And so have you been to I'm sorry, I'm probably ADHD, who knows. Have you been to, the American Museum of, oh gosh, the one where they make all the different things like chips out of toothpicks and, oh, never mind. But there's a whole collection of things that a man made sitting at meeting. He worked for IBM for 100 years or so it seems. But he did things with paper cups, and they're brilliant. But he did it all at meetings, and so I got a chuckle out of that. Do they have a fit when you bring your phone out at meetings?
They actually don't, but
Anyway, I'm sorry, I've distracted you. You're writing at meetings in your notebook, and where else? What kind of ideas do you get on the subway? So, I get a big kick out of that.
whenever I'm handwriting, I usually find it easier to come up with new ideas than to improve ideas I'm already working on.
Okay.
So usually I'll take that time to work on something that I haven't spent that much time on. For instance, the short stories that I'm working on now, there are 7 of them. Soldier's Curriculum is just the first one. I'm currently writing the second one, but any of 3 through 7 is what I'll end up working on when I'm
And
on
are
the
they
subway.
Connected?
Yes.
Okay.
They all take place in the same universe.
And the same characters?
Not all the same characters, but there's a significant amount of overlap.
So there's, what you called them, Skelesites?
Sclerocytes,
Sclerosites, and the other guys were,
the Thracionians.
and they're throughout the whole story.
The Thracionians the soldiers' curriculum is actually different than the other stories in that there's very little overlap between that and the other stories. The other stories overlap a lot more.
Okay. And you told me earlier you're a big reviser in your process.
Yes, I do have a lot of trouble with that, and that causes me a lot more difficulty than it probably should.
Okay, well, I have the opposite problem. I write the first draft, we're done. But editing and rewriting is every writer's, you got to do it, because generally it comes out better the second time. You know,
Yeah,
it's like-
absolutely.
it's
But
like
the problem is I never
leftovers.
seem to finish. It takes me forever to finish the first
Right,
draft.
that's the big deal when you say it's done. We have several writers in the writers group who worked on things for 20 years. I don't have 20 years left. You do, but I don't. And so 20 years is out of the question. Actually, I might still be alive at 85. We'll see. But you're sitting on the subway. Have you ever looked around and said, I wonder what that person's story is? No.
I haven't.
Oh, see, I do that all the time, and some people say I'm going to get myself mugged because I talk to people on the subway all the time. But anyway, so at work, you get ideas for stories. So you have the notebook with you all the time, or most of the time.
I never have to get on Metro without advance notice, and
Oh, okay.
at work, Tuesday and Thursday are the big meeting days.
Okay.
Tuesday is when all the work that no one wanted to do on Monday gets done, and Thursday is when all the work nobody's going to do on Friday gets done. So those are the big
Okay.
meeting days.
Okay, and that's another story on the meeting's productive. We're not going to ask that. Not going to have you put that on TV. So, do you ever write at night?
That's when I do the vast majority of my
Oh,
writing.
that's right. You're not a morning person. Because I have the problem. I'm good in the morning, early, or I'm good late at night. And I get up at 5 every day. So those late at night and they don't connect very well. And plus, I'm a political junkie. I got to watch the political shows every day. It's amazing I don't write about politics. What does your writing do for you? How does it make you feel when you write? Good or bad?
I actually don't know.
So you don't.
No one's ever asked me that before.
Well,
I suppose I just haven't been writing long enough to know
okay.
what it does.
Do you think it's lonely?
No. But then again, I'm a fairly solitary person. So
Oh, okay. So, do you think solitary people make better writers than extroverts like me?
not necessarily.
Okay. Well, I do actually, but that's a whole nother discussion for another show.
You just have to be able to withstand it long enough to get something written.
Okay. How important is reading to writing, in your view?
All the experts insist that you should read at least 10 times as much as you write, or something to that effect.
Something to that effect. What do you think?
I don't know. I think it's important that you read a lot just to expose yourself to a variety of different styles and mechanics. However, I think there is a point of diminishing returns.
Mm-hmm.
So, because
So,
I think
so what kind of things do you read?
I read a lot less fiction these days than I did
Uh-huh.
before.
Okay.
So
Does
I'll
that
read.
does that reading, obviously you're in a technical business, so a lot of your reading is technical.
Yes, it is.
Does that help your, I would think that would help your fantasy writing and your science fiction
Why?
because it's technical. It gives, well, I don't know. I never had anybody ask me a question back. I like that. I'm going to have to try to incorporate that into the show. I think any reading helps my writing. I, like you, do a series of short stories. I made mine too ambitious because I lived at a place called on Kermit Avenue. And so I decided to make a collection of stories called the Kermit Avenue Stories. And I lived at 64 Kermit Avenue. So you can guess, there was going to be 64 stories. There's 7 of them written. And I don't know have you thought about a collection of short stories as opposed to a novel?
That's actually where I got the idea of writing the short stories. In addition to wanting to practice, the writing craft overall, because I do have a strong tendency to be wordy. So this has definitely taught me to be more succinct in my writing. But I don't think I'll give up on the novel.
Uh-huh. Well, I hope, do you write any nonfiction? Like, is it necessary for what you do at work?
Well, I can say this. Depending on how well staffed your project is, all engineers need to be technical writers to a certain extent. And again, if you don't have a lot of staff dedicated to technical writing, you need to be able to write to various audiences. So going back to your previous question, I think that the writing I do at work actually does help my writing overall, especially in terms of being consistent in how I write and having to write to different audiences helps me understand the information that I'm writing about better than I would
Okay.
have otherwise.
Now, you're a software engineer, as you've said. You work on software projects. Is there any similarity between a new writing project and a new software project? And how you approach them?
Yes, I approach them both with outlines.
Okay.
Now, with a new software project, I'll definitely there's definitely a design phase that takes place before any code gets written, much like the design process I go through with my outlines.
Okay.
Overall, the process is actually very much the same because there's the design phase, there's the actual coding, there's a review phase,
There's the
then
testing.
there's a rewriting,
Right.
and then you launch it.
I don't know, I'm showing my age here. Do you still write pseudocode?
Yes.
Oh, okay, good.
It depends.
That was always my favorite part.
It's a I'd say it's a dying practice, but
Is there
it may not be.
pseudo writing where you try something and or you revise it into something more precise? I mean, my biggest problem as a writer is I have no discipline. Does the discipline of software writing help to the discipline of fiction writing?
I think it does. I mean, I believe that anytime you discipline yourself in one aspect of your life, it carries over to other things. And it's very easy for it to carry over from one type of writing to another.
Okay, and so you see that category crossover in your own work.
Absolutely. One of the things that I have difficulty with in both my software and my fiction writing is that I have a tendency to be wordy.
Okay.
I have a tendency to do the fancy thing instead of the right thing, the efficient thing.
Okay.
So cutting out the fluff in my programs reminds me to cut out the fluff in my stories.
Okay, so before college, like high school, when you were in Baltimore, you did no writing then?
No.
And no desire to do it.
Right.
What happened? I mean, I'm glad it did, but what happened? Do you know? I mean, put your finger on it if you can.
Well, it mainly started with TV tropes.
Okay.
Being a site that discusses pretty much all literary devices about any sort
That's
of...
a website.
Yes.
Okay.
They discuss literary devices in pretty much any type of work that you can imagine. Comic books, TV shows, movies, Western animation, Japanese animation, anything. Number one, I was pleased to see, these detailed analyses of, my favorite shows that, I thought nobody paid any attention
And
to
what shows
whatsoever.
are those, maybe? What shows might those be? You
Oh,
said your favorite shows. I'm just curious because I'm wondering if they match mine.
Oh, well, one of them is an animated series called Full Metal Panic.
I don't know that.
But
Anyway, so your favorite shows, and so that got you interested.
right. Now, one of the other now on the flip side, they have a lot of criticism of some other shows. And, one of the things that they'll bring up a lot is how often really popular shows will be terribly written, but somehow maintain their popularity.
And you thought, I can do better.
Exactly.
Well, I was like Penny Peterson, who was here in our very first show, said she started writing, and her little books are wonderful, but she started writing because she was complaining about mystery novels, and her husband said to her, well, if you think you can do it better, do it. And by God, she did. And so, do you think you're better?
No, but I will be.
That's a great attitude. And so you're standing in front of, because I do this every day, you're standing in front of 8th graders, high school kids even. Or what do you tell them about writing? How do you get them to write? What do you say to them? Or if don't worry about it, because these are your fans. They love fantasy. They eat it up.
I'm trying to
my
convince
8th graders.
Right.
Just convince them to write.
I don't know if I could.
Okay.
I think that would require me to lie.
Oh, well, and there's no percentage in lying ever, let
Exactly.
alone to a group of kids, because God, they see through it fast.
Right, because my spiel on that would go something like, um, it's hard.
It
It's
is
rarely
hard.
fun, um, and you will pretty much not get any reward from this until it's over.
Okay, so writing's not fun. You get no reward. Don't really believe it. It
Now,
is fun. And unfortunately, we're coming to the end of our 28 minutes. But the one thing that's true, it's hard, and you gotta stick with it. And with that, thank you for coming,
thank you,
Mike.
Norm.
It was a great time, and that's it for another On the Books.